I sat there calmly at the defendant table watching my wife Amanda smirk at me from across the aisle. The marble courtroom felt cold, matching the icy stare she directed my way. Just 3 years ago, we had vowed to love each other forever. Now she was determined to take everything I had. I smoothed my modest but professional tie, as her expensive attorney whispered in her ear. That was when she said it loud enough for everyone to hear. He is literally too pathetic to hire a lawyer. I kept my expression neutral, knowing exactly what was coming next. Before I tell you what happened next in that courtroom, let me know where you are watching from today. If this story resonates with you so far, consider subscribing, as I share how I turned what seemed like my greatest humiliation into unexpected justice. I met Amanda during our junior year at Stanford University. I was studying education, a career change that surprised many of my friends. What nobody knew, including Amanda, was that I already had a law degree and had practiced at Wilson & Burke, one of San Francisco's top firms, for nearly 5 years. Law had never been my passion. I stumbled into it seeking financial security and approval from my achievement-oriented parents. I excelled academically, passed the bar on my first try, and quickly became one of the firm's rising stars handling corporate litigation. Then came the Westfield case. I represented a pharmaceutical company against a man claiming their antidepressant had caused his wife's suicide. The evidence was ambiguous, but I did my job aggressively discrediting their expert witnesses and getting key testimony thrown out on technicalities. We won. 2 weeks later, the plaintiff, Mr. Westfield, took his own life. That broke something in me. I left the firm the next month telling colleagues I needed a sabbatical. What I really needed was purpose. Teaching had always called to me, so I returned to school for my education degree, determined to make a positive impact rather than win at all costs. I met Amanda at a campus coffee shop. She was vibrant, ambitious, studying marketing and communications. Our connection was immediate. She loved my passion for teaching and my idealism. I told her about my career change, but deliberately downplayed my legal background, mentioning only that I had worked in corporate America before finding my true calling. It seemed irrelevant, and honestly I wanted someone who valued me for who I was becoming, not who I had been. We married 6 months after graduation. Amanda landed a job at a boutique marketing firm, while I began teaching American history at Oak Ridge High School. Those first 2 years were beautiful. We bought a modest house with help from her parents as a wedding gift. They contributed to the down payment, a fact Amanda would later weaponize against me. The shift happened gradually. Amanda got promoted, then poached by a larger agency with prestigious clients. Suddenly she was attending glamorous events, networking with executives, and bringing home twice my salary. Her new friends were different too. When they came over for dinner, conversation often turned to investments, vacation properties, or luxury purchases. "Ricky is just so passionate about teaching," she would say, with a smile that no longer reached her eyes. He could have gone corporate, but he chose to make a difference instead. The way she said it changed over time, from genuine admiration to something resembling pity. At home, small criticisms accumulated. Why was I still driving my 10-year-old Honda? Did I really need to wear the same blazer to parent-teacher conferences? Had I considered moving into educational administration, where the money would be better? "I do not need more money," I would respond. I love being in the classroom. The kids need stability, someone who sticks around, rather than using teaching as a stepping stone. She would sigh and change the subject. Our conversations grew shorter. Our intimacy dwindled. I noticed she guarded her phone carefully, always keeping its screen down or taking calls in another room. One evening, while she showered, her phone lit up with a text. I had never been the jealous type, but something felt wrong. The preview showed "Miss you already. Jackson." I opened the message thread and scrolled through months of exchanges with this Jackson, intimate and explicit, interspersed with complaints about me, her naive teacher husband. More disturbing were the references to my finances and assets. "His teacher salary is pathetic," she wrote, "but the house is half mine, and my parents paid the down payment, so that is going to be all mine when this is over." Jackson responded, "Trust me, I have handled hundreds of divorces. He will not know what hit him." When Amanda emerged from the shower, I was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone beside me. I had never been confrontational, but my legal training had taught me the value of direct evidence. "Who is Jackson?" I asked quietly. Her reaction told me everything. No shock, no indignation, not even embarrassment. Just cold calculation as she assessed the situation. "Well, I guess we can skip the part where I lie and you pretend to believe me," she said, reaching for a glass of wine. "Jackson is my attorney. And my lover, if you want the whole truth. We have been seeing each other for 8 months. "You have already spoken to a divorce attorney?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Of course I have. Did you think I would stay with a high school teacher forever? I have outgrown you, Ricky. Jackson is a partner at Blackwell and Ross. He drives a Porsche, not a Honda, with 200,000 miles on it. I see, I said, processing everything. And you have discussed our assets with him, she laughed. Why not? We are getting divorced. I want the house. My parents helped pay for it, and you certainly cannot afford to buy me out on your pitiful salary. That night, I slept in the guest room, researching divorce attorneys. The quotes I received were staggering. $25,000 retainer. $50,000 if it went to court. Money I did not have readily available without liquidating retirement funds. I considered revealing my past to her, accessing my old network for representation. But something stopped me. A plan began forming, one that would require patience and strategic silence. The next morning, Amanda informed me she would be staying with a friend. Jackson will be contacting you with paperwork, she said, wheeling her suitcase toward the door. Do not make this difficult, Ricky. You know you cannot afford to fight me. I simply nodded. I will do what I have to do. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later, delivered by a process server who caught me as I returned from school, arms full of essays to grade. The petition was aggressive, demanding the house, half my pension, and even alimony, despite Amanda out-earning me significantly. I recognized Jackson's work immediately. The petition contained boilerplate language from a template with minimal customization and several technical errors that showed carelessness. He clearly did not view me as a threat. That night I called an old law school friend who had no connection to Amanda or her social circle. Tom, I need advice, but total confidentiality, I explained after catching up briefly. My wife is divorcing me, and her lover is her attorney. Damn, that is an ethics violation right there, Tom said. Conflict of interest. I know. But here is the thing. She has no idea about my legal background. She thinks I am just a teacher who cannot afford representation. So you want to represent yourself, pro. Say. Exactly. But I need to brush up. It has been 5 years since I practiced. Tom was silent for a moment. This is either the dumbest idea I have ever heard, or absolutely brilliant. But I have got your back either way. Come by my office tomorrow. For the next 2 weeks, I maintained my teaching schedule while preparing my case at night. Tom helped me access research databases and updated case law. I drafted my response to her petition, addressing each point methodically while flagging the ethical issues of her representation. I also began a quiet financial investigation. Through careful research, I discovered Amanda had opened a separate bank account 6 months earlier, into which she had been depositing substantial portions of her paychecks. Under California community property law, this was still marital property, but her attempt to hide it showed clear intent. More concerning, I found transfers from our joint savings into this account on dates when I had been away at teaching conferences. Nearly $40,000 of our shared money gone. I documented everything. At school, I maintained absolute professionalism. My colleagues knew something was wrong, but I shared minimal details. Going through some personal changes was all I would say. My students deserved my full attention during class hours, and teaching became my sanctuary. Amanda, meanwhile, escalated her psychological warfare. She began posting photos with Jackson on social media, enjoying expensive restaurants and weekends away. Mutual friends awkwardly informed me, expecting me to be devastated. I am sorry you had to see that, my friend Miguel said one evening over beers. I shrugged. People make choices. I am making mine. She is telling everyone you are in denial, he continued hesitantly, that you cannot afford an attorney and are going to lose everything. Is that what she is saying? I took a long sip of my beer. Interesting. 2 nights before our first court date, I received a call from Amanda. It was nearly midnight. Jackson told me you filed your own response, she said, her voice slightly slurred. That is just sad, Ricky. You should have borrowed money from your parents or something. I am comfortable representing myself. I replied calmly. She laughed. A high school teacher against one of the top divorce attorneys in the city. You really are pathetic. Just sign the settlement offer we sent. At least you will keep your Honda. I will see you in court, Amanda. Your funeral, she said before hanging up. I spent that night reviewing precedent cases and preparing my arguments. I also pulled out my bar membership card, still active, since I had continued paying dues every year, unable to fully sever that connection to my past. I tucked it into my wallet alongside my teaching ID, just in case. The morning of the hearing, I woke at 5 a.m., went for a run to clear my head, then dressed in my best suit. It was not expensive, but fit well and looked professional. I packed my documents into a leather briefcase, a gift from my former law partners when I had made my first successful argument before the state appellate court. As I drove to the courthouse, I felt a strange calm. For the first time since discovering Amanda's betrayal, I felt fully myself. Not just Ricky, the dedicated teacher, but also Richard Harmon Esquire, who had once been known for his meticulous preparation and unflappable demeanor. I was ready. The San Francisco County Courthouse loomed imposing against the morning sky. I arrived 30 minutes early, watching from my car as Amanda and Jackson pulled up in his silver Porsche. She wore a designer dress and heels that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Jackson carried a sleek leather briefcase and wore a suit that screamed expensive tailoring. They walked in together, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. I waited 5 minutes before following. Inside, I navigated the security line and familiar hallways to courtroom 12B, Judge Beverly Wilson presiding. I had appeared before her twice in my previous life, and remembered her as thorough, impatient, with showmanship, and appreciative of well-prepared arguments. The courtroom was mostly empty. Divorce proceedings rarely attracted audiences. Amanda and Jackson sat at the plaintiff table, heads bent together over documents. I quietly took my place at the defendant table, arranging my materials precisely. Amanda glanced over, taking in my calm demeanor with visible irritation. She whispered something to Jackson, who looked my way and smirked before returning to his preparations. The bailiff called the court to order as Judge Wilson entered. Her eyes swept the room, pausing briefly on me before focusing on her docket. "Harmon versus Harmon," she announced. "Step forward." Jackson rose confidently. "Jackson Ross, for the plaintiff, Your Honor." "Richard Harmon," I said, standing, representing myself. Judge Wilson nodded. "Mr. Ross, proceed with your statement." Jackson launched into a practice speech about Amanda's contributions to the marriage, her family's financial input to our home purchase, and my alleged inability to maintain the lifestyle to which she had become accustomed. He characterized me as an underachieving school teacher who had benefited from Amanda's success and connections. "Furthermore, Your Honor, my client has documentation showing commingling of separate property that Mr. Harmon has incorrectly claimed as community property in his response filing. His financial disclosures are incomplete, and we have reason to believe he may be hiding assets despite his modest income." I kept my expression neutral, making occasional notes, while Jackson continued his mischaracterizations. Amanda watched me clearly, expecting signs of distress or confusion. When Jackson finished, Judge Wilson turned to me. "Mr. Harmon, your response." I rose, buttoning my jacket. "Thank you, Your Honor. First, I would like to address the inaccuracies in opposing counsel's statement regarding property division under California Family Code Section 760. I proceeded to methodically dismantle Jackson's arguments, citing relevant case law and statutes, without consulting my notes. I explained how Amanda's separate account constituted breach of fiduciary duty under Family Code Section 721, and how the transfers from our joint accounts were improper. Jackson's expression shifted from dismissive to concerned. Amanda's smug smile faded. I could see her whispering urgently to him. That was when it happened. As I explained the precedent established in Marriage of Fossum regarding commingling of separate property, Amanda interrupted with a stage whisper clearly meant to be heard. "He is literally too pathetic to hire a lawyer." Judge Wilson's gavel came down sharply. "Mrs. Harmon, that is enough." I continued without acknowledging the interruption, but Jackson, clearly rattled by my unexpected competence, interrupted. "Your Honor, opposing counsel, I mean Mr. Harmon seems to be reciting memorized legal terminology without understanding the context. As a layperson, he cannot possibly comprehend the complexities of more versus more regarding transmutation of separate property." Judge Wilson frowned. "Mr. Harmon seems to be doing fine. But Mr. Harmon, may I ask about your familiarity with legal procedure? Your arguments are unusually well structured for a pro se litigant." This was the moment. I reached into my pocket and withdrew my wallet, removing my California bar card. "Your Honor, I am in fact a licensed attorney admitted to the California bar 10 years ago. I practiced corporate litigation for 5 years at Wilson and Burke before changing careers to education. I have maintained my license and continuing education requirements." I handed the card to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. The courtroom fell silent. Amanda's face drained of color as she stared at me in disbelief. "Well," Judge Wilson said, examining the card, "this is unexpected. Mr. Ross, did you know about Mr. Harmon's legal background?" Jackson fumbled with his papers. "No, Your Honor. This is the first I am hearing of this. My client assured me that her husband was a career teacher." A career I chose after leaving law, I clarified. But I never surrendered my license. I turned to face Amanda directly for the first time. You never asked about my life before we met. You assumed I had always been just a teacher, that I could not possibly have been anything else. That assumption has led us here today. Returning my attention to the judge, I continued. Your Honor, I would like to present evidence of financial impropriety by the plaintiff, including unauthorized transfers from joint accounts and failure to disclose separate property as required by law. I submitted my documentation, including bank statements and transaction records. As Judge Wilson reviewed them, Jackson whispered frantically to Amanda, whose stunned expression had transformed into barely contained rage. These transfers occurred on dates when I was away at teaching conferences, I explained. Nearly $40,000 was moved without my knowledge or consent in direct violation of fiduciary duty requirements. Judge Wilson looked up from the documents. Mr. Ross, does your client wish to explain these transfers? Jackson rose. Your Honor, these were legitimate transfers for household expenses. We can provide documentation at a later date. The statements show the funds were not used for household expenses, I countered. They remain in Mrs. Harmon's separate account. Along with funds she diverted from her paychecks for the past 6 months, while we were still living together as a married couple. The judge nodded. I see. And regarding the house which both parties claim, Your Honor, while Mrs. Harmon's parents did contribute 20% of the down payment, that gift was made to both of us, as evidenced by the card they gave us, which I have included in Exhibit C. Under Family Code Section 852, without a written transmutation agreement, their contribution became community property. The proceeding continued for another hour, with Jackson struggling to regain momentum. Amanda remained uncharacteristically silent, her earlier mockery replaced by simmering anger and occasional disbelieving glances my way. When all arguments had been presented, Judge Wilson made her preliminary rulings. The house would be sold, and proceeds divided according to the community property formula I had outlined. Amanda would need to return the transferred funds to a joint escrow account. Her request for alimony was denied, based on her superior income. Most importantly, Judge Wilson noted serious concerns about the ethical implications of Amanda's relationship with her counsel and the timing of that relationship relative to the separation. This court takes a dim view of dishonesty in financial disclosures, she concluded. Mr. Harmon has presented compelling evidence of questionable financial behavior that will be considered in the final property division. We will reconvene in 30 days for final disposition. As the judge exited, Amanda stood abruptly and stormed out, Jackson hurrying after her. I remained at my table, organizing my documents, experiencing neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement that justice had been served. As I prepared to leave, the bailiff approached. Judge Wilson would like to speak with you in chambers if you have a moment. I followed him to the judge's chambers, where she was removing her robe. Mr. Harmon, she said, gesturing for me to sit. That was quite a revelation today. I apologize if it seemed theatrical, Your Honor. I felt it necessary to establish my credibility. She waved away my concern. It was actually refreshing to see someone so prepared. I remember your work on the Technodyne case years ago. You were impressive then, too. May I ask why you left the law? You clearly have not lost your touch. I considered my answer carefully. I needed to make a positive impact more directly. After a particularly difficult case, I realized I was good at winning, but not necessarily at justice. Teaching gives me purpose. My students need advocates who understand both education and the law. Judge Wilson nodded thoughtfully. The legal profession lost a good one when you left, but I suspect your students are better for it. She stood, extending her hand. Good luck with the remainder of your proceedings, counselor. I have a feeling you will not need it. The next month passed in a blur of paperwork and practicalities. Amanda moved out completely, taking only her personal belongings as required by the temporary orders. We communicated solely through emails regarding the house sale and division of property. Jackson withdrew as her counsel, citing professional conflicts, and she hired a new attorney who approached the case with considerably more caution and professionalism. The final settlement closely mirrored Judge Wilson's preliminary rulings. The house sold quickly, and after the proceeds were divided, I found a small but comfortable apartment closer to my school. The settlement provided enough financial cushion that I could focus on rebuilding my life without economic anxiety. The emotional aftermath was more complicated. Despite the vindication, I felt hollow. The marriage I had believed in was gone based partially on my own choice to hide significant parts of myself. While Amanda's betrayal was inexcusable, I recognized my contribution to the distance that had grown between us. I reconnected with Tom regularly, our friendship renewed through this ordeal. After hearing the full story of the courtroom revelation, he laughed until tears formed in his eyes. The look on her face must have been priceless, he said, wiping his eyes. But seriously, Ricky, have you considered what this means for your career? You could practice again. You clearly have not lost your edge. I am not leaving teaching, I replied, but I have been thinking about combining my worlds somehow. That conversation planted a seed. Over the following months, I began offering pro bono legal consultations to fellow educators, dealing with contract issues, tenure questions, and educational law concerns. Word spread, and soon I was fielding requests from teachers across the district. By summer break, I had established a small practice operating evenings and weekends, focusing exclusively on education law. It energized me in unexpected ways, allowing me to use my legal skills in service of a community I cared deeply about. The healing continued in other ways, too. I joined a hiking group, finding peace in mountain trails and camaraderie with people who knew nothing of my past drama. I dedicated more time to mentoring students interested in mock trial competitions. Gradually, the pain of betrayal faded, replaced by gratitude for lessons learned and a clearer sense of identity. 6 months after our divorce finalized, I encountered Amanda at a coffee shop. I had just finished advising a teacher about a disability accommodation issue when she approached my table. "I almost did not recognize you," she said, gesturing at my casual attire and the legal pad spread before me. "You look different." "I feel different," I replied honestly. "How are you, Amanda?" She set down her cup. "I am adjusting." Jackson and I did not last, unsurprisingly. A pause. "I owe you an apology, Ricky. Not just for the affair, but for how I treated you, for what I said in court. It was cruel and unfounded." "Yes, it was," I agreed. Neither accusatory nor forgiving, simply acknowledging truth. "Why did you never tell me about your law career?" "All those years, and I never knew who you really were." I considered the question carefully. When we met, I was running from that part of myself. Later, it seemed irrelevant to who I wanted to be. Eventually, it became easier to maintain the omission than explain it. I looked at her directly. "But you never really asked about my past either, Amanda. You made assumptions about who I was based on what you could see." She nodded slowly. "I did, and I missed knowing someone extraordinary because of it." She gathered her things. "Take care, Ricky." "You too," I replied, watching her leave. That brief encounter brought unexpected closure. I realized that while our marriage had ended badly, it had also freed us both to become more authentic versions of ourselves. Today, I continue teaching history to high school students while building my education law practice. I have found balance between two vocations that fulfill different parts of my nature. I have also begun dating again, this time with complete openness about all aspects of my life. The experience taught me that true strength comes not from winning, but from knowing yourself completely and living accordingly. Sometimes what seems like our greatest humiliation becomes the catalyst for our most authentic life. And sometimes the pathetic one is not who everyone assumes. I often think about that moment in court when everything changed. Not because I enjoyed Amanda's shock or Jackson's discomfort, but because it marked the moment I stopped compartmentalizing my life and embraced all parts of myself. What about you? Have you ever had a moment when being underestimated ultimately worked in your favor, or a time when keeping part of yourself hidden backfired? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more reflections on personal growth through adversity. Like this video if you believe in standing up for yourself with dignity rather than vengeance, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes our greatest strength lies in what others cannot see. Thank you for listening, and remember that every ending, however painful, carries the seeds of new beginnings.